Hello and welcome to this video. This is the second part of the Reddit opening of the week for week 3 2016, battling rare first moves. Yeah, the first video was about one before the orangutan or Sokolsky opening, and part 2 is about one b3, the somewhat more restrained way of trying to get the bishop to b2. This is usually called the Larsen opening or Nimzovich Larsen opening. Yeah, black with many of those small moves, let's say, has a wide range of moves. Yeah, black can play basically anything here, and with some with good hopes to equalize the game. However, I have to go for one move, and my recommendation is quite clearly one e5. If you can get that center pawn out, just go for it. Of course, as I said, you can go c5, d4, d5. Other moves are also okay, but I feel e5 is probably, objectively, with a small margin, the best move. It is the most active one, at least. White here usually goes bishop b2, attacking the pawn, and here black I think should play knight c6. There are also a number of people who play d6 in this position. The idea is to lay the fianchetto and build up something that is looking like a King's Indian. Of course, playable, but I see no particular reason to block my bishop and play knight c6. We might as well get it developed later to some active square or d6. We will see some of that later. Yeah, here white in most cases plays the move e3. Very logical, yeah, to develop that bishop, possibly play bishop to b5. We should, however, briefly look at alternatives. White players also have tried knight f3 to attack that pawn. And here black doesn't have a great choice. Okay, you can play d6, but what's the point? Let's advance, yeah, gain time on that knight. Knight comes to d4, that is the usual continuation. And here black should simply take the knight and play d5. Very logical play, grabbing the center. An interesting little moment here is after e3. While black can play a number of moves here, I think that bishop f5 is the strongest one. And even though you might never have this on the board, the idea is still interesting to note. What white would like to get into is something like c4. Yeah, I'm just, let's say black plays this, right? And white plays c4 and black plays c6, and white takes and takes and does this. This is not so bad, yeah. This bishop is quite nicely placed, and white might nibble at the center here, the e4 pawn. And this can also be slightly weak, the d5 pawn, after the e4 pawn gets traded. This is not a bad position at all. So what black would like to do is, he would like to play in a way that after c4, and this is a mistake now, he has c5, bishop goes back, and now d4. And this is quite obviously good for black. Yeah? With black we have a huge advantage in space already, and no problems whatsoever. So that's an interesting idea. It's simply to avoid an early knight f6 so that the bishop cannot take. If we play here, then something like this is actually possible, and knight c3, and now d5 looks very tender. Yeah? White gets control over that square, so already a little bit awkward for black. So an interesting idea just to keep in mind, not just for this particular position, but I think it's quite interesting to not play this early on, to have c5 and d4 available. Yeah, so black is basically delaying that a little bit, and for example, if white plays, I don't know, some slow move, we can still go here, for example, and wait. If white goes c4, we go c5. Black has an advantage in space here after 7 moves, so that cannot be bad. Okay, that is a rare line, however, knight f3. I mean, it's a rare line among or within a pretty rare line in the first place. One of the most famous games in the Larsen opening was with c4, played between Larsen and Larsen-Spassky in 1970. Larsen here experimented with the move knight f3. The normal move would be e3, and this is something that we will look at later via different move order. Knight f3 is what Larsen played, and now it's important to not play some lame move, not d6 or whatever, of course push the pawn forward. Knight comes to d4 and bishop to c5 with tempo. I mean, white doesn't want to go back, so he took. Black takes with the d pawn, of course, e3, and bishop f5. Black is always taking with the d pawn in this kind of trade situation to get quickly developed. Bishop f5, queen c2, queen e7. This is this famous game, which probably many of you will know. In this position, Spassky already with black has a slightly more comfortable position, but Larsen's next moves are really, really bad, to be honest. f4 is already very questionable, and knight g4 was a very strong reply by Spassky. Now white is struggling already. This e3 pawn here can easily be the target of a sacrifice. If white plays some move like that, boom. That's pretty nice. Queen takes, bishop takes. Check. And this is gone. The queen is now lost. Or it has to go here, after which
check.
This is going to be the end of the game. So that was a nice little line. And in the game, after g3, h5, h3, and now h4 by Spassky, he won with a fantastic attack. That's one of the most famous games, I believe. Rook g1, and here Spassky found the very nice win. Not the only win, but the very nice win. Rook to h1 for a tempo with g2. And Larsen resigned a couple of moves later. After rook g1, check, and queen h1, black is quickly winning. So this is a very nice game. Not the best advertisement for the Larsen opening. His creator, in a way, or promoter, losing so quickly. But it is not a bad opening. I mean, b3 is certainly playable. Okay, the main continuation, however, here is the move e3. As I said, quite a logical move. Here I recommend to play knight to f6. Black also may opt for d5. Very logical move. The drawback of it is that after bishop b5, bishop d6, white has the move f4. And this is not easy to handle. I tried to figure out if there is some simple way for black to play this, but it doesn't seem to be that easy. There are some very sharp and somewhat unconventional positions where I feel it doesn't really pay off to look at it, because, well, you won't get it on the board often, and if you get b3 on the board, it can be against some specialist who is more knowledgeable about those wacky positions that happen here. Note that this is not possible, as bishop g7, queen h4,
check.
White has king f1, and this is no attack whatsoever. The rook is lost simply. There are some lines that are similar where you can take therefore an attack, but here king f1 is excellent for white. Black in fact has to play f6, and we get very strange positions where I think, is it knight? Not quite sure. I think white sometimes even goes knight c3, something like that. It was really weird, so I couldn't really recommend that for practical use, let's say. It's something that you can, of course, explore if you are, let's say, in a correspondence game, or if you have an offhand game that is not so important. But I feel for competitive play, d5 is a little bit impractical to do. So my move is knight f6. Just develop that knight. Here is the mentioned possible transposition to that Larsen-Spassky game, or that kind of setup with c4. Here white, however, has not played that knight f3 d4 thing. Yeah, this move c4 is not that popular. Bishop b5 is by far the main move, but still c4 is not bad. What white is basically doing is he invites black to play a Sicilian with colors reversed. And this is in fact what I do recommend. I understand that, I mean, of course, this one. I recommend to do that. Even if you are not a 1e4 player, or if you don't play the open Sicilian, I would still advise to go for that. I think that this is a very comfortable version of an open Sicilian with reversed colors, and relatively easy to play. You don't need any specific knowledge, let's say, like when you battle I don't know, against the Najdorf with white, where something, I don't know, very theoretical might happen. This is not the case here, so I think this is pretty easy game for black. I'll show a little bit more there, but I want to point out that if you absolutely don't like the idea to play some kind of open Sicilian with reversed colors, I still recommend to do it. But okay, let's say you absolutely don't want to, then black has alternatives here, even though I think they are theoretically less good than d5. g6, for example, is something that you can play. It is can never be a bad move. d5, as I said, is a bit more to the point. It normally leads to something like that: knight f3, d6, d4, and black might take. Knight takes, bishop g7. This is, of course, perfectly fine. I mean, white is not having the most aggressive setup here with the bishop on b2 and e3, and I mean, this is about equal. Castles, rook e8. Yeah, if you play some kind of King's Indian, if you have that in your repertoire, then this kind of position probably you wouldn't mind to play. However, if we go back, d5 is my main recommendation. By the way, there is not much else, to be honest. You can play bishop e7, let's say, and castle, but at one point you probably have to play d5. I mean, it doesn't make much sense not to. So my real move here is d5, takes. Here, black has this idea to go on the weak square on d3, so white players go a3. Yeah, that's the main move. And here black has a couple of options how to set up his pieces. You can play with g6, for example, to bolster that pawn, but I think the best continuation is probably bishop to d6. Go for that setup. What we have to keep in mind is that this is an open Sicilian, all nice and good, but white here has already committed to a somewhat unaggressive setup. It's with the fianchetto. That's not a given in the Sicilian. It happens often, but it's with the queenside fianchetto. And it is with b3, not with b4, where sometimes, if we think about the open Sicilian, a b5, b4 push might attack a white knight on c3. Here, white is already committed to some kind of hedgehog. Yeah, this is what normally happens. White plays like queen c2, castles, d3, this kind of thing. And here, a simple setup for black is something with this. Yeah, like queen to e7, possibly king h8, bishop g4 if knight f3 gets played, and then some f5. It's very simple to play, and it is not as forcing and theoretically challenging as a regular, let's say, open Sicilian. So I wouldn't mind to play that, for example, even though I'm not an e4 player and have played like, I don't know, maybe 10 open Sicilians in my whole life in tournament chess with white. So why not? Yeah, it's certainly a good option. However, if we go back, white's main move here is the move bishop to b5. This is what you will face in most of the games by far. And here, for quite a number of years, the main move is bishop to d6. I'm going to show that briefly. It's not what I'm recommending, but I mean, it's good. Yeah, it's absolutely fine. It's just that I found that there is another move that I feel is quite interesting, and I want to shoot for that. Bishop d6 is the main move. It looks a bit strange to block that d pawn, but okay, e5 was attacked, and black's basic idea is to castle, maybe rook e8, bring the bishop back, and then shoot for d5. Why not? Now, this is definitely playable. It leads to some interesting complications often after knight to a3 with knight c4 around the corner, where black is often going for a6 or knight a5. It's also very strange, but seems to be an okay move. Yeah, this is a good alternative. If you for some reason don't like my move, then you can always go for bishop d6. There's nothing wrong with it. It's just that I saw that there's a second option, and I wasn't even aware that this existed until I checked my database, and I felt this was very interesting. There is the move e4, and to be honest, I think I've looked at this a couple of months ago briefly and played it even in a blitz game, just as I think of it. Anyway, I looked at this today, and this somewhat weird move is indeed pretty strong. Yeah, why is this strong? I mean, it keeps that pawn safe. It was attacked after all with taking e5. It gains space. It prevents knight to f3, and it seems, just if you look at concrete moves, that white doesn't have anything great that he can do. If d3, for example, if we look at a couple of moves, then black is just going a6 and gets the bishop pair. And, well, this is just excellent for black. Yeah, we have two bishops for no, I mean, there is no kind of compensation there for white, and we can be very happy. This is at least equality, I think. I mean, I think most people would prefer black here, I guess. You can easily develop, both bishops can develop freely. Let's say knight e2, for example, and something simple like bishop f5. White can never really take on f6, as queen f6 is a tempo on the rook. So something like this, for example, there's not e4. e4 is not hanging as we attack the rook in the corner. Yeah, d3 doesn't feel very threatening, but yeah, what does? In some games, d4 has been tried, after which I think black has a very strong move that has not been played yet, but it's pretty logical. Knight to e7. The idea is c6 and d5, building up a big center and gaining time on the bishop. And it's pretty awkward there on b5. I think white probably wants to go back now and get it out of the way, so that at least you can play some c4. The computer is actually, Stockfish is liking bishop f1, giving black a slight advantage, of course, already, but bishop f1, yeah. Naja. Okay, bishop e2, and black just plays this, and this, and has a position that, yeah, it's typical white position that black has, more space, and it looks like a pretty good type of a French defense. Bishop a3 is an interesting move, but black can answer this easily with g6 and a possible h5, bishop h6, and castles. Like, as it's sometimes seen in the advanced French or the King's Indian attack, that can be an idea, letting this bishop kind of, yeah, look into blank space. Pretty good idea, knight e7. d4 is not very challenging. Yeah, white usually goes for knight to e2. We have like maybe a dozen games or so with that line. It's not very popular. Knight e2, and again black is happy to just net the bishop pair. This kind of trade on c6 is very, very common in this opening. However, in most cases, if we just do a comparison job, in many cases after bishop d6, for example, white plays that capture in a situation where he is able to play d3 and e4. This is not a precise line now, I know, but I just want to show you the basic idea. Something like this is what happens quite often. And this position resembles some kind of exchange Ruy-Lopez or delayed exchange Ruy-Lopez, where white is putting this out, maybe knight c4 and so on. Note that the pawn is on e5. In the line that I'm suggesting, e4, knight e2, takes. Here black has managed to push the pawn forward. So in this position, we are not in danger that this d3 e4 happens, which is not terrible for black, but a pawn on e5 is always limiting your bishop. And here, with this e4, we have this advantage in space, and we can be sure that both our bishops will be quite active. White at some point will play d3 or f3, which we can just take, and then he has a center, some center pawns, but black has very open development and the two bishops. In a recent game between Granda Zuniga, the top grandmaster from Peru, and the American young grandmaster Daniel Naroditsky, this position was reached, and Granda played knight g3. If white castles, for example, we have a simple plan. Yeah, bishop goes to d6. And on a very good day we get to sacrifice, but probably this is not going to happen. Yeah, so like this and this is a typical way to play. And yeah, white will probably play some kind of d3, f3 at some point. Black has easy play, rook e8, bishop, develop the bishop. Everything looks simple and easy. So knight g3 immediately is a little bit more aggressive, as white is not committed to castling. Here, this is a move still worth to remember. It is not a mandatory move, but I think the best one. h5, just play aggressively, attack this knight with a quick h4. Knight c3 is hanging, and now bishop g4. That was also something prepared with h5, prepared by h5. Yeah, now f3. Takes, and now important move h4. Yeah, attacking this knight that has to move. And now I think black has a good position. He has at least equalized. I would prefer black here a little bit, but it's not something terrible for white either. But black is definitely in good shape. In the game, knight f1 was played. If you go here, which looks a little bit more obvious, then just bishop h5. Yeah, black will castle long, and it will be an interesting, tense fight, but never forget, black already has some money in the bank with his two bishops. So knight f1 was played in the Granda game, and again bishop to h5, queen e2, queen to d7, d3, castles, and knight e5. This is how the game went. It ended in a draw ultimately, but I think this is a position that black can be very happy with. b3 is not a bad opening at all. It is not as challenging as mainline openings, but it is definitely not something questionable like 1g4, for example, which is, as I mentioned already in the video 1 about the Sicilian, is really bad. b3 is something that can be easily played. I've played it myself a little bit when I was a junior player to once in a while avoid mainstream theory, and it was always fun to play something that is not as explored. e5, I believe, if we jump back, is a good principled response. It's not nothing that you absolutely have to play. You are free to play d5, c5, and be okay as well. But I feel like e5 is very principled. Black gets his fair share of the center and has some chances to be better also if white is playing in too much of an extravagant way, if we have seen, for example, in that Larsen-Spassky game. This is not so easily possible if you play something like b3 d5 or b3 c5. It's okay, of course, but it's not as demanding from the white player, let's say, as 1e5. You should definitely play 1e5 if you are an e4 player, I believe. Just if you think about that very comfortable open Sicilian with reversed colors, I think you can be very happy with the positions. Okay, well, I hope you enjoyed this collection of simple recipes against 1b3. And yeah, I'll continue with more videos against the rare openings by white on move 1 tomorrow. Thanks for watching.